This list was almost impossible to make. There are so many Nokia devices that I've owned and loved, but these 5 stand out above all else. And my top 5 highlights how very little I've always cared about raw specs. I was never really that obsessed with the numbers as long as the phones offered a compelling enough package. And the devices that I liked the most were never really chart toppers, but they left their mark on me and earned their place on my list because of illogical aspects, such as the way they made me feel, for example, or due to certain periods in my life that I will always cherish, where the phone was the perfect companion for that period. And if I was to ask you about your own top 5, I think your answers would probably be as irrational as mine. Anyway, without further ado, here are my top favorite Nokia phones of all time. I love a good slider, and yeah, that does include the miniature overpriced burgers. Nokia made so many good ones in the past, like the premium Sirocco line or even some of their N-series offerings. But the one that is the most memorable for me is the Nokia E66 from 2008. As an E-series fanboy, I bought this almost purely because of how much I loved the way it looked. And honestly, it never let me down. It's incredibly sleek and thin, and it's made out of stainless steel, so it has that nice cold metallic touch to it. And the sliding mechanism is absolutely flawless. I could literally do this all day. I do admit though that the phone did have its flaws, like having a really mediocre camera on the back, for example, and having a 2.5mm headphone jack, which even then was pretty obsolete. But every time I pick it up, look at it and slide it open, I couldn't care less about its flaws. I would probably even still rock one today if it had 4G and WhatsApp support. If there was ever a phone that made me feel like a professional photographer, it would have to be the Nokia 808 PureView. To say this phone completely changed my perspective on what smartphone cameras can do would probably be an understatement. The 808 took all the rules that we know about mobile photography and completely rewrote them. A massive 41 megapixel camera that was about 3 times as large as your typical flagship back then, lossless zoom, pixel oversampling, high quality audio mics, manual camera controls, xenon flash, and a physical ND filter, and so on and on. A phone like this would have never been approved if it was made today, but I'm so glad that Nokia released this perfect swan song to Symbian. By the way, putting the 808 on this list proves how irrational it is. This device was running on Symbian, which was announced dead by that point, and it was about 2 times as thick as an ordinary smartphone, and didn't really have amazing specs on paper. But I have absolutely zero regrets about picking it up. If there was ever a flagship that was tailor-made to my own needs, it would have to be the Lumia 930. Minimalism applied to perfection in design, and it comes in green, which is my favorite color. It also feels like a tank in the hand, and it's super durable. It has an awesome display, a fantastic camera, and powerful hardware. Its Windows Phone operating system is pretty unique and matches its hardware perfectly. So the 930 ticks almost every box that I want in a phone, which is why it's earned its place here. And it's probably the only very rational device that I have in this list. My second most favorite Nokia phone of all time is probably the least rational one on this list. The Nokia E70 had many flaws, such as a joystick that would just stop working after about 6 months of ownership. And it has chrome pieces on its edges that, once you connect your phone to a PC, can actually electric shock you. This device probably has the coolest form factor in my opinion, thanks to a swiveling QWERTY keyboard that just pops out of nowhere. And that keyboard, in my opinion, is also probably the best keyboard to be ever put on a phone. Its tactile feedback is absolutely flawless, which made typing on that keyboard feel like a fantastic experience. And the screen would separate the keyboard into 2 halves, which actually made it easier to use. The swiveling mechanism that reveals the keyboard is also super satisfying. And a big part of why I liked it so much was that I was a young teenager. I was at that phase where I was obsessed with texting and writing notes, so it served me perfectly. Sadly, it's the only device on this list that I don't own anymore, and I can't seem to find it anywhere.
Every once in a while, a product comes along that changes our perception of how we use technology and how natural it can feel. We wanted to design a better way to use a phone, and it comes down to one simple gesture: a swipe.
You knew this was coming. My number 1 favorite Nokia device of all time has to be the Nokia N9. It had stunning hardware made out of a unibody polycarbonate shell that sits perfectly in your hand. I love the way the display just melts into the sides of the device and how elegant the camera plate integrates the camera onto the phone. Everything about this hardware makes me believe that the N9 is a design masterpiece. And by just looking at it, it's almost impossible to believe that this phone is over 11 years old, and yet somehow still looks modern today. And then you power it on and MeeGo Harmattan comes into life. You double tap on the display to wake it up, and then every interaction on the display is a swipe. This was the first phone to have no hardware or touch buttons outside the display on the front. The squircle icons that look like they're floating on top of the display, alongside Nokia Pure font, which still looks great, and a multitasking experience like no other. What makes the N9 even more special is that it's the first and last phone to utilize MeeGo Harmattan, which made owning the Nokia N9 a bittersweet experience. All I can do is just swipe away the inner sadness and move on with this video. I've already made 4 videos talking about the N9, and if you think I'm gonna stop at 4, you're definitely mistaken. So that's it. These are my top 5. I didn't include any modern Nokia phones because I wanted to focus on nostalgic devices from the past. But if you guys enjoyed this video, I might just do another top 5 which only includes Nokia's modern Android phones. Now it's your turn to share. What are your 5 favorite Nokia devices before 2016? Or maybe create a list where you include modern Nokia phones too. Share your top 5 in the comments below. Also, if you want to support the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, check out my Nokia N9 nostalgia videos, or why I think the Lumia 930 might be the ultimate flagship for inspiration.